something. So this week we're going to continue with our paintings where we were looking at Carrie Ackroyd's artwork, or Carrie Ackroyd as you're supposed to say it, and the idea was that we were going to create compositions using a few birds. And I know that a few of you have been working on this and you've already created your composition and maybe even starting another one. I've still got mine on the go, so I thought this week it would be a good chance just to give people a bit of space to catch up and do these things. In fact, in this morning's lesson, we did an extra class on lino, but a lot of people chose to carry on with their bird pictures. So we're going to do that this evening, and we can also share each other's work as normal. So to create the composition, we were using the rule of thirds to divide the space up and help to organize and balance the pictures out. Okay, so I'm going to just take us straight over to the old wall. So you'll remember this from last lesson. Obviously, I've painted a bit of it now, and I've used these pictures of the birds. As you can see in here, I use the rule of thirds to get the eye of the bird on the crossover point on thirds, just there, and on the crossover point just there for the eye on the blue tit at the bottom. Now, once you've got the birds drawn in, the next thing to do is to add your foliage. So once you've done that, you should be ready to go on the paint. Now, if you remember, I talked about using a limited color palette on your artwork. So obviously you can paint the birds in as normal. And then the background, choose some colors that are going to stand out quite well. So I'll go straight over to the desk. So over here on the desk, we've got my partly painted version just here, which I know that you've seen already. So the orangey reds contrast quite nicely with these pale greens that I've got in here, turquoisey greens. And then we've got lots of these overlapping shapes of the foliage and things as well. So we've created this composition. So I've taken inspiration, as you know already, from Carrie Ackroyd's work, and she does serigraph designs, which means she uses screen printing to help create these out of multiple layers of color that are then printed around over each other and so forth by using different masked piece of paper. So we've taken that idea, but we're using acrylics. Now, I thought it'd be interesting today as well to just show you a video of her talking about her work. As I've done previously in lessons, I thought it'd be really nice to do that this evening as well. So I'm going to go over to another page and play you a video so that you can learn a bit more about the purpose behind what she does, because there's more to her work than simply a landscape or wildlife. There's a lot of links to the poetry of a local poet from Northamptonshire called John Clare, who I'm personally inspired by for my work as well, which is one reason I've got her work here. But I do love the way she uses these colours, which I've tried to do in this piece here. So I'll go over to the video player and we'll have a look and see if this works. Hopefully it will. I haven't done this for a little while, so okay, there we go.
By Langley Bush I roam, but the bush hath left its hill. On Cooper Green I stray, 'tis a desert strange and chill, and spreadingly so soak, ere decay had penned its will to the axe, the spoiler, and self-interest fell a prey. And Crossbury Way, and old Round Oak's narrow lane, with its hollow trees like pulpits, I shall never see again. Enclosure like a Bonaparte, let not a thing remain. It levelled every bush and tree, and levelled every hill, and hung the moles for traitors. Though the brook is running still, it runs a naked brook, cold and chill. So when I read that, I was thinking, This is amazing. I've just got to put these words into a picture to describe what's happening now. I didn't expect that I was ever going to sell a picture like this, so it's very gratifying when I have. I did lots of other things to make a living before I gave it all up and decided to be an artist. And of course, as soon as you decide to do that, you look at a blank sheet of paper and you haven't got a clue what to do, really. And so things progress quite slowly. I'm always a landscaper. And so what happens is I got interested in the poet John Clare because he writes about the landscape and everything that's happening in it. So when I came across his work, it meant that I then had a sort of separate side scene of work that was to do with him that I've maintained for nearly 30 years now, frighteningly. I think when I first started reading John Clare, and I read a couple of poems earlier on, but I hadn't really hit on anything that meant anything to me. But it was during the 80s when intensification of farming was altering completely the landscape that I lived in, which is the landscape I grew up in. So I knew exactly what was getting lost. We lost an enormous amount of hedges, trees, ponds, all in an incredibly short space of time. During John Clare's life, 200 years ago, it was the period of parliamentary enclosures, and his parish was enclosed, which meant that there were similarly enormous changes to the methods of farming. I recognised exactly how he felt. It was a cathartic experience for me to make work that used his words, but images of what was happening to our landscape now. Mostly, I'm a screen printer or serigraphy, which serigraphy was what it used to be called. I like to go through a process. It means that you spend a lot of time planning something out. You spend a lot of time planning how to make it simply. And I think sometimes painting is so open-ended, you can keep changing things and keep changing things. And within printmaking, things are fairly tight and they either work or they don't. So I like that kind of edge to it. I did this one about 20 years ago, and what it represented for me then was that the left-hand side was sort of the landscape that I'd grown up in the 50s, with small fields and mixed farming, which then changed to being totally arable farming. And the words in it are words from a poem from John Clare, where he's remembering fields where he remembers the names of the places have changed so much. And it was realizing that the hollow trees that I'd known as a child had been tided away, and that the next generation of children wouldn't have the trees to play in, made me really want to make this picture. As you're drawing and you notice something else and you notice something else, you can't help but be filled with wonder. I think that the people who are most happy are people like astronomers who kind of know about going light years into space, so they know how small and insignificant their own life is, and somehow looking at smaller things works the same way as well. What wonder strikes the curious while he views the black ants' city by a rotten tree or woodland bank? In ignorance we muse, pausing, amazed, we know not what we see. So you can see why Clare is a poet for our time, because he is so clear-sighted and so descriptive, and he notices everything, that just want people to open their eyes and look and see what's around them.
There. I hope you enjoyed watching that. So the lovely thing about her work, of course, is the representation of the wildlife and the beautiful landscape. But it's also interesting because it talks about how things have changed over our lifetimes and just before it, but also in John Clare's. So what that makes me wonder is how things have what it was like in John Clare's lifetime, and how when farming came, the Enclosure Acts were coming around, how it changed in his lifetime, and then how it's changed again in our lifetime. So it makes you wonder about what we've lost over many centuries as well as recently, I think. But I really enjoy looking at the representations of nature, and also it's quite interesting to see that there's words and things in there too. So thinking about her work, it's interesting now to try and create a composition and use the colours, perhaps inspiration from what she does, to create some pictures of our own. Okay, so if we look down at my picture here, you can see that I'm continuing with that today. Now, at the end of last week's lesson, what I did is I was painting all the background, but towards the end of it, you will have seen me start to add other details, like these ones just over here on the top. So we've got all the outlines of the leaves, which I'd painted, but then I started to add extra layers of leaves back over the top. So these are quite opaque actually, which means you can't see through them very well, but I plan to add some more transparent layers so that you can actually see through the different layers of leaves in here, without hopefully making it look too overcrowded as well. So we're going to continue then with our compositions and ideas today. Remember that when you're using acrylic, it's important to add a bit of water because the paint will obviously dry quite quickly with acrylics. So if you add a little tiny bit of water, it'll just keep the paint going. And when you're using it, don't use your brush so it's absolutely soaking wet either, because it'll end up that you haven't got the paint mixed properly perhaps, or the color becomes almost like watercolor, which is good actually sometimes for doing more transparent layers. But with this particular piece of work, we're trying to do much thicker layers of paint and color to get that opaque effect, which is partly why in this one I didn't ask everybody to paint a background before painting over like we've done in previous pieces of work as well. So in a sense, that brings the white through of the paper back through the color, but it also forces you to really look at applying enough color to obviously make it vivid and bold enough to stand out and be nice and fresh looking when we paint it. So I'm going to be working back around the background to begin with, and then hopefully in this lesson I'm going to work on the old blue tip that I've got here as well. So I've got my little photograph of the blue tip. If you're a bit stuck for photos, I put they're still on the drive, on the shared drive, so you can get those photos and either draw off the screen or print them off so you can add them to the composition. The other little thing that I meant to mention is about perspective. So if I go back to the drawing quickly. So in the drawing, look, we've got one very large bird, and obviously they're probably different size birds anyway. And I might have mentioned this before, but if you make one of the birds quite a lot smaller, you start to get a sense of perspective and space in your design as well. So that again helps to balance it, but gives it a sense of space, scale in the image too. Okay, so during the rest of this lesson, what I spend the time doing is basically working on the background. On this side of the composition, what I'm trying to do is make the colours, keep the colours quite vivid, but go a little bit lighter on this side, to give the impression of the background light is coming in from the right hand side. So one of the things to try and do as I'm using the paint here is to mix the colours, because I'm bringing in different tints of these bluey greens and things by using Vitalio blue, primary blue, and Vitalio green with a bit of yellow. So I'm mixing those colours but using lots of white. But as I'm progressing across the picture, I'm blending those different tints together as I go. And that allows me to change the colours, to mix the colours really well, because as you know, acrylic paints, they dry quite quickly. So adding just a bit of water to the paint, not too much, because I want it to be quite opaque, the colour, and white's very good for that. But I want the colour to be quite opaque, so I'm just mixing a small amount of water, and then whilst working on the blending, keeping the brush damp rather than wet, because if the paint gets a little bit sticky as it starts to dry and you add lots of water on, you'll find you lift the paint off of the surface of the picture, which kind of is annoying. Doesn't mean it's ruined, but you can then work back over the top afterwards, as you can with acrylic paints, which is one of the nice things about it. You can keep layering the colours on top of each other, which is great fun. So here I've darkened the picture down towards the bottom again, and that's to emphasize again the lightness up in the top right hand corner of the picture, and also to give a sense that the light is above us and below it's going to be a little bit darker. You will often see that in photographs such as the one you can just see off the side of the screen there. There's darker and lighter areas of colour, sometimes more subtle than others, but I'm using that idea in the background of this picture. And then in just a few minutes I'll start to paint in the old leaves on there as well. And the idea when I paint the leaves is if I've got a dark background, I'm going lighter with my leaves, and if I've got a light background, I'm doing the opposite again and going darker with the leaves. But I'm allowing myself the freedom to blend and mix again different tones and tints of those colours as I progress across the picture. I don't actually get to the bluebird today. I may do a little bit on that next week to finish it off. Just here I'm adding. I didn't add much detail to the wings there, and in order to work out what the background is, I just needed to do that. So I've just done that just there, as you can see. And here we go with the leaves. So as you can see, they're adding a darker leaf over the top of the light background. It kind of, I guess, suggests the leaves have got the light behind them, so they're coming through darker because they're, obviously a shadow's been cast. But basically, it's a tool really to make this design work, because this is more of a design than a painting of something specific, because as this task has been set by me here, I've decided to create a composition out of different photographs, put them together to create a design with this sort of pattern of leaves in the background. So not necessarily realistic, but these are motifs that allow us to be creative in the placement of the leaves and so forth. So it's actually quite a lot of fun, but it means you're not just drawing something that's directly in front of you, you're having to use your imagination and judgment to place things within the picture plane here, which I have to say I really do enjoy doing. And I know that a lot of you have enjoyed doing this as well. There's been some fantastic results that have been posted on Facebook. So thank you for everyone who's done that. And if you've still got yours to finish, then please post when you finish them off. It'd be great to see them, and I know that everyone else appreciates them, and it's encouraging to see each other's work, either as it progresses or as it finishes. And there's been such a variety of results from this as well. Lots of beautiful different colours and things. Very much inspired by the amazing work of Carrie Ackroyd, and how she puts together some of her bird pictures, such as the one on the screen here now of the dunnocks. I've always enjoyed her work very much. And of course, as was pointed out earlier, I have also been inspired by John Clare, because he paints such vivid and beautiful pictures in his words of poetry, which kind of lifts you, you know, and makes you feel like you want to see a little bit more of nature as well. So here I'm adding a little bit of a pink, just to sort of add some embellishments to the design, really, just to lift some of the other areas, because the pink, this sort of pinky color, is going to be almost opposite to the greens, but it's not going to dominate the whole of the image too much. So it accentuates the design and lifts those colors out. And I'm going to use in just a moment some pinks in the blossoms down there on the bottom left hand corner. There we go. So these accents of color, which are opposites in a way, really, kind of just lift some of the detail out of the background or out of the picture. Gives it a little bit more energy, because they're opposite colours, complementary colours. So in just a second, I'm going to finish off these few leaves here and then go into the branches. I think it'd be well worth finishing this off, so I'll probably work on the blue tit in our last lesson of the series on painting birds and creating compositions and all these lovely things we've been doing. So I'm going for brown. So the brown obviously links in quite closely with the jay that I've painted. I've had it added some white to it, so that the colour's not too strong, but the white also allows me to put a bit of variety in the colour and suggest the form and shape of the branch that I've got in here as well. And it doesn't stand out too starkly from the rest of the image. So a lot of fun today. We'll carry on working on it next time, I think. But thank you for coming along, or thank you for watching if you're watching from somewhere else. And I'll see you again soon in another video, I guess. Bye. Bye-bye now. Thank you.